We want to close up the doors. I think we may as well close up, keep the ruckus from outdoors from coming in. Thanks everyone for coming to this meeting. This meeting is a neighborhood meeting for what I call the northern portion of Ward 2 for our traffic and traffic calming discussion on Pine Tree Road and neighboring areas. So as your commissioner, I'd like to welcome you to this neighborhood meeting, and I thank you for your concern and desire to discuss the traffic concerns and speed mitigation devices on Pine Tree Road. Now, this meeting is intended to follow up several of our other meetings. We had at least one other public meeting like this before the mitigation devices were installed, and then we've had multiple meetings at the traffic committee, as well as at our Board of Commissioners meetings. So over the last 3 years, we've had quite a bit of discussion. A lot of people have been involved with all of these, and other people have gone just one meeting or one or two meetings at different times, but there's been a lot of discussion for a long time. Now, basically, what I want to do is I want to hear from everybody who wants to speak. Okay, so I want everyone to have a say, and I want to hear everyone's opinions. So I want to set some ground rules for everyone, okay? First of all, I want everyone to be respectful of others and to be respectful of other opinions. We're all neighbors. All of us are neighbors here, so we want to respect our neighbors and treat our neighbors as we would like to be treated. Now, in addressing these issues, the main concern has always been and remains the safety of our constituents who live on Pine Tree Road and in the surrounding neighborhoods, and that's always been my chief concern. Also, this is not a political issue. While this is a public meeting, it is by invitation. I'll give precedence and priority to our neighborhood and our constituents. And I'll ask that any other commissioner or candidates hold their comments and provide them to me in writing after the meeting. This is intended to be a discussion with the neighbors and the staff, and that's what I want this to be. Also, please, everyone sign in if you can, and then also, please, when you come up to speak, state your name and address for the record. Now, I think it is being recorded, yes. After extensive review of this Pine Tree Road issue since 2013, our initial data showed that there were some safety issues on Pine Tree Road. There was a lot of speeding on that road, and the data showed the 85th percentile is at one location is 41 miles an hour. So people are obviously going 41 and some even a little bit faster than that on Pine Tree Road. And that was our initial data that was obtained. I think that was from 2013 or 2014. Where was that? Well, that's actually on the paper, but let me just get into that later. Initially, additional stop signs were recommended by our traffic engineer, and we installed stop signs. And there were stop signs. They weren't for traffic calming, but they were installed as portions of the road did not comport with what we call the traffic code or traffic warrants, and they necessitated stop signs, so they were installed. With respect to the traffic calming, one of the suggestions that was made, and one that I supported, was to have one stop sign at Pine Tree and Cricket Road, but that was deemed not to have the proper warrants, and the installation was not authorized by the Board of Commissioners, that there wasn't the justification to do that. And again, our codes require that we don't use stop signs to slow traffic. And Amy Kaminsky can explain a little bit more about that when we have her open it up for questions. Now, with respect to Pine Tree Road, the Board of Commissioners also considered speed humps in 2014, and they were recommended by the Township staff in the form of Township manager and police, and I think Amy also. They were. The speed humps were not favored by the fire department and others and certain neighbors. And in an unusual show of bipartisanship, we did not move forward with the speed humps. We did request other alternatives to speed humps. The currently existing traffic islands were traffic calming devices designed and recommended by the staff as an alternative to speed humps and were authorized by the Board of Commissioners last year. The traffic islands were favored as they do not disrupt the travel of emergency vehicles like fire trucks and are preferred over speed humps in that regard. Please, let me say, here, will you come up? Kate, you can come up and talk let me just get through this. In addition, traffic islands are much easier for snowplows when compared with speed humps, which cannot be effectively plowed consistently. And they're better for stormwater management as they don't disrupt existing stormwater runoff patterns. Finally, the islands do not have the concomitant noise that speed humps bring. Speed humps cause a lot of noise when cars bottom out and going over speed humps and scraping the road surface. So in this case, the Board of Commissioners, it was recommended to us to install these islands, and we approved them last year in a bipartisan fashion. Now, again, I called this meeting. I know a lot of folks, a lot of folks wanted to talk about, and there have been some, just many discussion points about these traffic islands. I do understand that the traffic islands are a trade-off and not favored by some of the neighbors. Specifically, some items were not anticipated during design and construction by the experts and by the Board of Commissioners. Specifically, pedestrians and service vehicles being among the main concerns that I've heard about. In addition, people are also concerned about the aesthetics of traffic islands. Now, as your representative, I'm here to represent you, and I will support the further traffic interventions or not that are desired by the constituents. However, I did want to have everyone who's interested in this come out and make their opinions known. In addition to that, I did want to also review the efficacy of these devices, which have in fact reduced the speeds on Pine Tree Road for the locations that were identified. So the locations that were identified are as shown on the report that is on the back table if you don't have it. There are two locations that we looked at in 2013 and 2017, and it does show a reduction in the speeds in those locations. So there is some effectiveness by the traffic islands. Again, I understand that there are some complaints, so I wanted to provide this opportunity and this forum for everyone to discuss it. Okay, so I'm going to invite everyone to come up and speak. But first, I'm going to also ask for Amy Kaminsky, who is our traffic engineer and who is an expert in this area that is employed by the township. And Amy works for an outside consulting firm called what is it?
Gilmore and Associates.
Gilmore and Associates. I should know that. And we also have our Our Director of Public Works, he's our senior engineering person, Steve Norsini, also a construction expert and responsible for all of the Public Works staff. We have about 40 staff, Public Works, that they handle a variety of construction projects, tree trimming, and also trash and other services. So the guys in the bright orange yellow shirts, Dayglow yellow, those are Steve's guys. They all work for him. Also to my right, I have here the township manager, Mr. Bob Zinkowski. I think everybody knows Bob in the township. He's very, very famous. He doesn't have a suit on today. He's unusual not to have a tie today, but he usually has a tie. Beside him, we have our Superintendent of Police, Superintendent Bill Colarulo. Beside him is Assistant Superintendent, newly promoted Chris Flanagan, and also Assistant Superintendent, newly promoted Andy Block. And then we have Lieutenant, wait, that's not Dietrich, is it?
Sergeant Mark Stiansen.
Okay, all right. I thought we were going to have, and then Jen DiStefano at the end, who's a great help to all of us as administrative person for the township manager and for all of us. So, with those introductions, first I'm going to turn this, hold on, Kate. I'm going to turn this over. Amy and Steve, any words based on what I just said right there?
Wait, before you turn it over, can you answer the question that I asked?
Let me just finish. The answer is no. Can we just talk? Finish? Go ahead.
I don't have anything to say. I'm interested to hear what some of the questions are and if there's anything that I can be of assistance to.
Okay. Do you want to talk about? Initially, we did several studies. We did review of several alternatives, and we did decide on it was the traffic islands that were chosen by the Board of Commissioners and move forward. Can you give us what are the dates? We did 2013, right? Or
I don't remember the exact dates. I wasn't prepared to answer specific dates, but I do recall that we provided several alternatives, and the one with the speed humps was not accepted by the fire department because of the slope as you're heading up towards Upper Gulf Road. They were concerned with the response time, and so they had asked us to consider other alternatives for those locations.
It's true.
And I believe that's where we came up with the medians.
Right. So we did a 2013 traffic study. We reviewed multiple alternatives. We did the design, and we'd approved this intervention. It was installed, and 2017, we've done the confirmatory or the confirmation testing. So that's kind of the timeline. Steve was also in charge of the construction and oversaw that as well. Anything to add?
No, Commissioner Booker, I think you laid it out. We did several studies on the topic. We had public meetings. We did it at staff traffic. We did it at the Board of Commissioners. What Amy brought up was a salient point in regards to the concern by the fire company. And ultimately, the board awarded the project, and it was my job to get it completed.
And that was completed in 2016, I guess. 2016, so last year. Okay. So I will take some questions, but what I want to hear is I want to hear the public. I want to give everyone the opportunity to speak, and I want to be respectful of the time as well. So, we'll try to aim for an hour and a half in this meeting. Go ahead. Sure. Wait, can you come up? Here you go. Wait, here you go.
One more question. You said it was recommended by, and I said by whom? She said this. Who recommended this? You said it was recommended. So I wanted to know who. Kate Vetrano. Sorry,
Yeah.
Kate Vetrano, I'm sorry, thank you.
And your
Pine Tree Road, 120.
120.
And when you were speaking a few minutes ago, you said that this was recommended by,
This was a result of staff, our engineering staff. We had several alternatives, and the recommendation was this particular intervention, and the Board of Commissioners followed that recommendation and approved it. It was in the traffic study that you sent out, Kate.
That's where it was recommended?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Good.
No, I just wanted her question.
Oh, okay.
My name is Arnold Levinson, and 119 Pine Tree Road. And first of all, I want to thank you and anybody else who was involved in putting this together. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
My questions, before I have something to say later, relate to the particular data with which you presented to us. And in order to understand this a bit more, I would like to get a sense of where 107 are and 141 are relative to the downslope of Pine Tree Road, which curves around, as you know, I'm sure, comes down and really reaches rapid speed right before Cricket Road. I'm particularly interested in that area because I happen to live right across from that. And I suspect I'm probably one of the few guys that still cuts his lawn.
I cut my lawn, too.
Good. We have a lot in common in Radnor Township, and I can tell you, I have to be very careful before I step out off the curb into the road to turn my lawnmower around, which I just finished doing this evening, because I find it, I believe the data, but I find it hard to believe that at that point, the 85th percentile is 37 or 41 or someplace near that. So I'd like to know
You think it was faster or slower?
Oh, I think it's faster. I
Well-
mean, that's where the speed really picks up.
Right.
Because people stop at the stop sign well up the street, then there's a big downslope, and you pointed out you requested a stop sign, or you were in favor of a stop sign at Cricket, but because of some warrants, just didn't cut the mustard.
Right.
So I'd like to, again, if somebody could explain to me where these points are, number one, what time of year this was done, and what time of day these speeds were registered.
Okay.
And once I get the answers to that, I also want to point out that, well, this is the 85th percentile, but there's still a significant percentile beyond this,
Right.
at which people are speeding even more.
Right, so if I understand it correctly, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but 85th percentile means that there's 15% of the people that would be going faster
Right.
than the speed indicated at the 85th percentile, correct?
Correct.
Commissioner Booker?
So 41, well, hold on. So 41, 15% of the people are going 50 or maybe even
Exactly.
60 miles an
Right.
hour. Right.
Right.
So go ahead, Bill.
Sergeant Stanson has those stats that you're asking for.
Great.
Okay, that's correct. The two locations, again, were in front of 141 Pine Tree Road, which is just south or west, however you want to look at it, compared to Spruce Tree.
So that's well up where.
That's where the one location was.
Where the stop signs are and people haven't picked up speed. There you go.
Correct. And when we had the counter at the first time in 2013, there was no stop sign there, as you're well aware.
No, but afterwards.
Okay. So south of Spruce Street, and then the counter at 107 Pine Tree is just south or west of Cricket. So that area where you're speaking of, that's where the counter was placed.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome. And also, to answer any further questions, the counters are put out for 7 days. It's generally Sunday to Sunday or Monday to Monday, Tuesday to Tuesday. That's there for 7 full days, and they run 24 hours a day, so there's not a specific time. They continuously count the volume and the speed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Time of year.
Okay. Yep. The counts in 2013, the one in front of 107 was November 12th through November 19th, 2013. 141 Pine Tree was December 3rd through December 10th, 2013. And then this year, they were both done, 107 Pine Tree was March 24th through March 31st, and 141 was April 4th through April 11th. So it wasn't the same time of year. However, we do our best to make sure that we're not putting these counters out when schools are out, when there's a holiday. We're trying to get the most effective counts that we can. So the data does reflect that. We didn't put it out there when, it's summer break or Christmas or what have you. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Joe Hamill from 37 Ridgewood Road. First off, for those who live on Pine Tree, I know this is a vexing problem. I'm the one, I pass through. I don't have to live on that street. It's really tough, especially with that grade that you were talking about. You mentioned the purpose behind this was safety. How many accidents have there been on that road based on speed or excessive speed? I've been there for 10 years. I don't recall seeing any accidents. Has there been any accidents?
Wait. Wait, could we, want to come up, Bill? So, here,
I live at 110, and one winter we had a car end up smack in the middle of our yard. Now, I don't know if there's a police report. It was probably, I've been there for 20 years, so I'm guessing that was probably 15 years ago. It started with my neighbor across the street. She went over on that side and then crossed over into our yard. Do you remember, like 15 years ago?
and I would also say that the speed limit on that road is 25, right? 25 miles an hour. And we see by the data that 41 was what speeds people were going, and that means, again, that some 15% or more people were going even faster than that. So there could be people going 50 and 60 miles an hour, so that's the kind of safety concern.
Well, that's the question. If there's been no accidents, but there are people averaging 40 miles an hour, is the speed limit artificially too low? And I'm just throwing this out there because
it wasn't the average, though. Remember, it's the 85th percent.
Right.
So
35 miles an hour may be the speed limit that more accurately reflects the average speed at that time.
It could be. It's 25. It's a cut-through road. I don't think the 25 is out of line, but I don't know.
And one of the issues in this, as I understand it, is whether the cure is worse than the problem. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. I remember, my recollection is before the islands were put up, above the islands, I don't know what direction, but above the islands, there were orange artificial or temporary cones or barrels put up, which slowed people down before they get there. I was expecting the islands to be higher up, which would slow people down before they come down to that curve. By the time you hit that curve, you're already going 45 miles an hour. So I'm not sure about the placement of it, why they were selected there, but I was wondering why, if you're going to have islands, and I don't think islands are a great idea, why they weren't put farther up north. And one last question is, I agree the no speed bumps, but were rumble strips at Everall looked at as to whether that was an alternative to speed bumps to slow people down? Because if safety is the issue is not so much the noise, it's anything we can do to slow people down.
Yeah, let's get that.
Well,
So number one, let's get the crash. First, Amy, you want to discuss, or Steve, you want to talk about the design, if you have any input in that. Again, we rely on our staff design this, and it was their judgment that this was the appropriate location. So I think I'll ask them, and then we'll go to get any kind of crash data that we have.
I do recall, I don't have the reports with me, but I do recall that somewhere along the way, we had actually talked about doing more traffic calming further north of that area, but it was decided, and I don't recall why it was decided that it would start at that location. As far as the rumble strips, those would have been a noise nightmare for anybody that lived along Pine Tree, and that's not something that we would have recommended, because I think that would be looked upon very unfavorably by any of the residents living along that street. That's just one reason that wouldn't have been considered at all.
Right, tremendous. So that would have been tremendously noisy, and I agree, it wouldn't be something that I would favor, but it wasn't recommended either. So do you want to talk about some of the crash data that we have?
Yes, Commissioner. According to these records here, it looks like since 2009 we've had 4 crashes on Pine Tree Road. One was the result of a vehicle pulling out of Cricket and not entering the roadway before it was safe to do so, getting struck by a car coming down Pine Tree Road. The crash in 2011 occurred because the driver admitted to being on his cell phone and texting while he was driving and then struck a tree. Another crash was somebody pulling out of their driveway and getting struck by a car coming down. And finally, it looks like in 2010, we had somebody who fell asleep while they were driving their vehicle.
Sir, I could tell you this. I could put officers there 12 hours a day or 24 hours a day. We have written hundreds of speeding tickets over the couple of years. So speeding is absolutely a problem, or it was a problem on that street. Just because we had 4 accidents doesn't mean we can't have 4 more.
Understood, but my original statement was whether the speed limit is artificially low because the natural speed limit is 30.
Well, all I could say is the township manager and I, when we went to the last meeting, we were heading southbound in the Ford Explorer. My foot was not on the gas, and we were doing 50 by the time we got down to Pine Tree. Is it artificially too low? That's something that I'd have to defer to PennDOT or the experts. But you have to consider it's a residential area.
It's a residential, and it is what it is. I mean, it's 25. It might be difficult for drivers to maintain 25, but that doesn't mean that the road is not designed to be at 25 miles an hour. Well, what I'd like to do, can we have everybody come up and start to speak? You know, just, I'd like to do that. Yeah, I mean, so if you would, just come up and then we'll respond, and we'll stay as long as we need to. Again, say your name and address.
So, Dennis Goldstein, 205 Pine Tree Road, and been living this nightmare for a few years. Traffic, first of all, just to state whatever the data is showing, traffic calming has not happened on Pine Tree Road. It's actually gotten worse. We go back to when this, you made 2 points, Richard. One was that the BOC authorized, and they do not use stop signs to slow traffic. And Amy, I really need you to answer this question, because you put stop signs between Spruce Tree and Woods Lane without anyone's approval. And I'm all for slowing down traffic, but doing the right things.
Well, Dennis, the Board of Commissioners approved that. It was recommended, and we did approve it.
Okay, so, but let me just talk, it's the same thing here. There's unintended consequences of that issue, because on Pine Tree now, where I live, between those 2 stop signs, there's noise from the stop sign because people are going from a dead stop to up an incline. So that was not ever considered. She talked about noise on the last one. The pollution, the NASCAR drag race effect between the 2 stop signs is ridiculous. And, you know, it's ruining the quality of life, and that's not considered. I think the same thing here with the islands. The people that live there, that walk their dogs, they can't even get out in the street anymore. You can't even walk in the street anymore without really almost being killed, unless you actually turn around or get off the side of the street. That's unintended consequences. That's bureaucratic, and I'm in the middle of it, and I never wanted to be in the middle of it, and I'm so frustrated that we have to deal with it. And I want Amy to really listen to this. When you make decisions, think of the unintended consequences. And I don't know how it's going to be solved. There's many solutions. People are going to talk. But I have to say, I am so disappointed how that's been handled. I've made a recommendation to get the 1 stop sign going up the hill removed. Richard, you worked with me on that. And it was told that once a stop sign's put in, it can never be removed. And that's unfortunate.
That's what, it could be that, so Dennis is talking about the stop sign at Spruce Tree and Pine Tree Road, and especially the one on the northbound on Pine Tree. I had specifically requested that we remove that, at least the northbound side, because it's up the hill. You really don't need it. But once again, it was recommended that the stop signs be placed there because of the conditions of the traffic. We could, as a Board of Commissioners, remove stop signs, but I need to get 4 yes votes on that, and it's very difficult to get 4 votes that would be in opposition to our traffic engineering staff.
That's the political stuff to talk about. That's all I have to say. I'm sure there's a lot of other voices.
Hello, everybody. I'm Norm Danzig, 201 Pine Tree Road, Radnor. been a resident for over 30 years. My wife and I were on vacation and came back and saw the islands. It was news to us. We didn't even know. But there's a couple of things I want to mention about this. In the beginning, before any of this happened, I would sometimes go out in our driveway, and I would just stand there with some of the people that was speeding like that. And I would take out my iPhone, and I would take pictures. And you know what they thought? I was working for the police. I'm going to get them with their tags. And I just said it out of, the way the people will notice when they think that they're watching. And I want to express great thanks and appreciation to the police department, because there was an officer that could come over, and I said, please, whatever works, he can stay in my driveway or whatever, and just be there and see what happens. And it was pretty amazing. The first time that it happened, without exaggeration, he pulled over 5 cars and ticketed them. What I found out later, which really annoyed me, is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand the officer right, the tickets end up going to the state. The money? Now, is that a state road, or is it a local road?
The citations that he's referring to is that they're issued from the state of Pennsylvania, even though we write them. The process and as you know, you have to go to the local magistrate. They generally collect all of the money. So on speeding tickets, we average around $12. They get returned to the township. Other tickets, we can get up to $25. But normally the fines are way over $140, $160.
So makes some big bucks.
I can only tell you where the fines play out.
They've got, is that how they're trying to make up their deficit, right? Okay, I got it. I used to work in government. The thing is that I think it is important to express the appreciation for the police department, because when the officer was there and the people knew who were driving it was happening, they would be very cautious. They would stop for a while. They would look around. Then when they realized the officer wasn't there, then they would zip up and keep going. And my point is that people didn't appreciate the safety of the others in the community. Now, I know that on Route 30, at one point, you put up a great sign. I don't know if you guys did it or whoever. They put up a great sign, though. It essentially was saying, don't even think about it. And here's what it'll cost you if you get caught speeding. And it was a big bucks, big dollars. And I think there needs to be more signs that indicate warning people that these are the kinds of fines you'll incur if you start messing around with their speed limits. And this idea of this miles per hour, I think, is a very big underestimation of how fast people have been going down that hill, or even coming up. They gun it coming up the hill, too. You know, particularly at night or in the evening or whatever, because there's nobody there. So they think they can get away with it. And it is certainly a safety problem. I understand that there is a mechanism that police departments can use that will determine areas of high speed, and I don't know if we've got it here, but high speed driving and the location. Reason I know that is I know somebody that works for PennDOT, and he told me about it. And it has to do where the police department then would know where's the big speeding happening, and electronically could identify the area, and then, if necessary, address resources to watch that high incident area. Have you heard of that?
Sir, I know what you're talking about, but,
good.
but what we have the experience from the years of where the problems are, where their neighbors will report,
Yeah.
or from where we set up our locations where we're going to do selective enforcement. So we know the areas, and obviously every one of my officers knows Pine Tree is definitely an area where they're speeding. So we already identified that and a number of other locations.
Okay.
So,
All right, but you know how fast they're going? I think 41 is an underestimation, but anyway. An average, okay. Well, I must be seeing a lot of the ones that are above average then. Okay. I have one more point to make about it. And that is that when I had advocated, and other people had too, is having the stop signs. The stop signs at Pine Tree and Spruce, okay, they're okay for certain things. But what happens is that what they're doing, a lot of them are, if they don't know that the policeman is there, they roll. They roll right through the stop signs. And I know that's against the law, right? Okay. So, and then they'll roll through both of them. They won't make a permanent stop. And you talk about accidents, and I know for a fact, because I saw some of this in terms of almost accidents at Spruce and Pine Tree. And even with having the stop signs there, because people just sometimes just don't respect what it means to stop. So I would also, add that to it. I understand how the residents in terms of the islands could be concerned, because that is a narrow area if they wish to walk in areas or, this type of thing. And I don't know what else could do it. I know that I wasn't in support of the idea of the speed bumps and stuff like that. But, because I supported what the fire department was saying and what the ambulance was saying and this type of thing.
Well,
But I think that
thank you
okay,
very
right, I'm going to say one more thing. The bottom line, well, excuse me. I know, but the bottom line is that once they know you're not there or there's no surveillance, they speed it up.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Ms. Brink?
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Brink. I live at 214 Hermitage Drive. I've lived in this township for 30 years, and Hermitage Drive is a cul-de-sac, and we are off Gulf Creek, and we either cut up Cricket or go on King of Prussia Road. And as we all know, the traffic on King of Prussia Road at certain hours of the day is horrible. And, cutting up, for me, go up Cricket to go down Pine Tree to make a, left or to go straight to certain is fine. What I'm concerned about is that, we moved here 30 years ago. And when we moved here 30 years ago, the township trimmed the trees. You go up Pine Tree, you come around that curve, the trees are so overgrown, you can barely see around the corner. You go down Gulf Creek. There are trees that are hanging down so badly that, I'm waiting for them to fall over with the next storm. The township used to take care of that. They don't seem to do any of that anymore. Eagle Road, the trees up Eagle Road is a mess. I just think part of the visibility is that problem. I also feel that, the township should take more responsibility for cleaning up the township. As far as those speed bumps are concerned, or not, whatever, I think it's too much on Pine Tree. I think that if you cleared the curve there somewhat, people would be able to see better, and maybe they wouldn't, whatever, and people wouldn't back out of their driveways and be hit by a car. I don't know what other problems can be resolved, but I just firmly believe the township in the last 30 years, or even the last 20 years, I feel that there's not enough care being taken to the community in the second ward. Thank you.
Sure. If I can answer to that, I agree with your comments there. I know before I got here, one of the big concerns were a lot about street trees. And from what I understand, the township many years ago to absorb the responsibility of taking on street trees, the ones where it used to be the responsibility of the homeowners, and then the township absorbed that. Well, when they absorbed that, they never took into account of how is the township going to take care of those trees. And there was no money budgeted for those. So now, from what we've calculated, we're probably about 20 years behind actually maintaining those trees. So now,
I mean, the township could spend $11 million buying a piece of Androssan.
I'm not going to go there.
Don't go there.
But we've calculated and working, Steve and myself, been working with our arborist. We're looking at probably investing $2 million a year just to get caught up on exactly what you're talking about. So that's one of our concerns too, is how do we get back into maintaining those trees? So I think we're on the same page of what needs to be done on those areas. So
I do remember calling the township about a year ago. I'm coming down Eagle Road, and there is a tree like this. And I called the township, and I said, this tree is laying on the power line. And next day, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there's so many accidents waiting to happen with all these trees and whatever, and I think it's something that the township should really take into consideration and do something, including on Pine Tree Road, where it's a mess.
we've got, as part of one of the meetings we're proposing to have with the Board of Commissioners as part of the capital program, this is one of the items that we propose bringing to the board is we have to get onto these exact items of the tree maintenance that you're exactly talking about. So we're on the same page and I agree with you.
Well, I do hope that I don't have to live another 30 years here to find an improvement.
I hope you live 30 years, but I hope you're gonna see us get to that.
I don't know about that, but I'd like you to.
Oh, I think you will,
this.
but good.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Next.
Hi, my name is Joan Berg-Stenson. I live at 43 Northwoods Road in Radnor. And so I am also one of those that comes down Pine Tree to exit from where I am. And I will piggyback to some extent on what Mary Ann just said with a somewhat different take on it. But there is in particular one place on Pine Tree Road where if you're going south, you go around a curve, and I think it's just past Cricket, and then there are the islands sitting in there. I had an incident one day last week. I came around that curve. I came around very slowly, which incidentally you can't see around because there are deciduous trees that are growing right up next to the road. That's been a situation that's been there for the 30 years or so that we have lived here. But I came around the curve, and this particular car was far enough down that I could see them, so I didn't crash into them. But there was a car just sitting in the lane, the southbound lane, whatever you want to call it, on that street. I had no choice but to stop behind the car, but any car coming behind me could not have seen me. I sat there and I looked at, can I go around this car or something like that? Well, with the way the islands are there and the signs are there, I couldn't go anywhere. I had no choice but to just sit there. Fortunately, the car moved after a couple of minutes and nobody else had come, and we all left. But that's a situation that was, number one, it could be corrected to some extent by cutting back the trees, and secondly, I couldn't get out of there. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Sass. I've been in Radnor, living in Berwyn Road for 24 years. And my question is, this is the first time while living in Radnor, I noticed these traffic islands. I have not seen them on any other roads in Radnor. So first of all, I wanted to know what was the intervention from Amy? Why did we come up with something like that? As you all know, King of Prussia is a hazardous road. There's a lot of curves. We go up, we go down. There's a lot of speed. My Spruce Street, Gulf Road, almost every road in Radnor, because it's an old town, has a lot of speed and curves and trees and you name it. So why did we decide to add the traffic islands to Pine Tree in particular? And second, I would like to know how much did this, again, bright idea cost us, the taxpayers?
Again, the traffic islands were an intervention that was recommended and designed by staff and approved by the Board of Commissioners as an alternative to speed humps. And it is something that is new and I don't know of any other place where you have it in the township.
That's a good thing, I guess. And how much did it cost us?
It was, for the construction, it was about $28,000.
Thank you.
My name is Tony Cardamone. I live at 443 Upper Gulf Road. I sympathize with all of you on Pine Tree.
36,000 for all.
Okay. I sympathize with you. I wouldn't want to live with those islands in front of me. But that's besides the point. I think it was a poor decision all around. I have just one simple question. I sit on several safety committees which revolve around what I do for a living, which is irrelevant for here, but suffice it to say I know what I'm talking about with some of these things. One of the best and most effective ways of quelling traffic on a situation that we have here is chicanes. Why weren't they considered for this?
Turns. Chicanes are a turn. And we looked at, one of the things that we talked about also was, we talked about chicanes. We haven't employed those any place that I've known about in Radnor, but we also talked about mountable curb extensions, which is another, like a chicane. So I don't know, Amy, we did talk about that, but we've never used those, have we?
Yeah, we did explore those, and I think if you'd have gone with the chicane, number one, I think it was rejected because it's difficult to snowplow around the chicanes, whereas but they also present an issue with bicyclists and pedestrians more so than the medians do. But that was part of the one of the discussions. I really don't want to get into.
Really be the most effective way to quell traffic in this sort of situation nationally, if it wasn't something that should have been considered. And when we have these conversations about Upper Gulf Road, which we will be having shortly, if it doesn't continually get postponed, perhaps we can talk about that.
Thank you, Tony.
Hi, my name's Kathy Hamill. I live on Ridgewood Road, around the corner from Pine Tree. I'm a parent of 3 children, so, have the same vested interest, I think, that everybody has here in ensuring that, we slow down the traffic on Pine Tree. I think, I guess to my husband's point earlier, I do sort of not see this as a very effective cure, and I just want to echo 2 things. One was, I think, the comment made earlier about the shrubbery. I mean, there's no question that turn that you're taking, the big bushes on the side, you make the turn, then you're seeing the island. For somebody who's not that familiar with the area, it's really quite hazardous. And second, hopefully the Radnor police have not yet had to get engaged, but I have seen several near-miss accidents, especially at night. I know somebody was having a function at one point on Pine Tree. People had parked, and I saw a car in front of me. He was trying to get around. Then he decided, maybe I should go around the island on the other side of traffic, and then there was a car, of course, as we're talking about speed, coming down at a fairly good clip. So I think I've seen this now two times, maybe a third. I mean, there was another time that was a little bit questionable, but I didn't think it was like an impending accident. So, I mean, I do think, for one thing, honestly, when they came in, I'm similar to you, sir. I had no notice, had no idea, saw them, and I just thought the size of them was so wide on a narrow road, and we do have a lot of narrow roads in the township. It just, to me, it's created a hazard, and potentially, downstream concerns about future accidents, particularly in that section of Pine Tree. I don't know how you all have functions or have people over, because I don't know where you park. So, Yeah. So, I mean, that's just my comment. You know, I don't have to deal with it quite as directly on Pine Tree, but I have to tell you, I understand that you have some data that slowed down traffic down some, but I think that it's offset. I mean, I don't understand how we chose the size of those and the potential hazard of those islands. So that's just, my point of view.
Thank you. If Amy, you want to chime in, but the intervention is designed, like others, to reduce the width of the road optically, and that produces the effect of slowing down the vehicles. And the islands that was part of the design. You want to?
It was. We followed PennDOT's traffic calming guidelines on developing the design for it. So that's how the design came about.
Yes, Diane.
Hi, my name is Diane Edbrill. I live on Spruce Tree Road, right around the corner from Pine Tree. I frequently walk my dogs on Pine Tree, though I'm very reluctant to do so. Any time where there's any kind of traffic, I agree with some of the earlier comments. I think it's gotten worse as traffic has gotten worse on King of Prussia Road. People use the combination of Pine Tree and Spruce Tree and Upper Gulf to avoid that. And, everyone's in a hurry to get wherever they're going. I applaud all the work that the personnel in the township have done. I think everyone has done the best they've could with the state regulations and with the best of intentions. But clearly, what's in place isn't working. So I guess my specific question is there a technology like that there's a speed-activated, like a red light camera like they have in Philly? Can we have like a radar-operated device that takes a picture of a license plate if it's exceeding the speed limit so that we don't have to use our valuable police resources to sit there at the corner and give tickets from time to time? Could we have something in place all the time that could enforce this speed limit?
Diane, there are excellent points you bring up. However, we're governed by the state on this. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, with the red light cameras and the speed cameras, they're only approved in the city of Philadelphia and the city of Pittsburgh. There's two other municipalities, one in Delaware County that just recently applied for the red light cameras only, and that's Springfield Township, and the one in Montgomery County is Abington. But the state is the one that regulates that, so we just can't arbitrarily put that up. We can't enforce it.
Okay, but there are communities that have sought this and gotten it. So this is maybe something that, as a community, Radnor could do. We could talk to our
just
state
the red
reps.
light, just the red light cameras.
Just the red light.
Red light cameras, yes.
But not a speed activated one. So there would have to be a red light that
Correct.
somebody ran. Well, I would then say, let's put a red light on the corner of Spruce Tree and Pine Tree because everyone is running that stop sign.
Well, we just arbitrarily can't put it up. There are warrants for that.
I know that there
And
are
also
rules that the township has no control over.
And also, for the residents that are here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, this is the only state where municipal police officers cannot use radar to do enforcement. We still have to use speed or electronically timed devices such as the NRAD and ESP. We cannot use radar.
So this is a matter of state law?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So some of the problems that we're facing in our community can't be solved here. They have to be solved in Harrisburg?
Through your state legislatures.
Okay.
So if you can contact them and
All
tell
right.
them you'd like.
What about putting up a sign that's a lie that says speed radar enforced? No, I'm totally serious.
We use passive, and you see it around the township. We use the passive devices, the radar speed display boards. It just brings awareness to people when they're operating on the roadway. Your speed is 35, 40, and so forth and so on. But it's only in a passive manner. We can't use that for enforcement.
Can we get that back? I mean, I know that
We have, and we have one for
for
each ward, and they're moved around each month. So the commissioners purchase them. There are 6 of them, and they're used. Each ward has one, and they're moved on a monthly basis.
I haven't seen one on Pine Tree Road in a long time. But thanks, everyone, for your efforts to find a solution.
Thank you, Diane. We did have that up last year, I think. It has been some time. We can put it back on Pine Tree in the cycle.
My name is Walker, David Walker. I'm at 260 Berwyn Road, and we're in this general complex. We have a very broad road, and a lot of new young families have come into our area, and we're unfortunately faced with enormous amount of cut-through traffic that goes from King of Prussia to across to Upper Gulf or back, and they go very fast through our community. I hope that I applaud what you're trying to do on Pine Tree. I understand the problem, and I hope that when and if you do various things, you come up with solutions that we could also apply on Berwyn Road. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tony Vitrano. I live on 120 Pine Tree Road. I think in order to address a problem, we need to know what the problem is to begin with. And what I keep hearing is that speeding is the problem. If the speed limit is 25 miles per hour and 85% of the traffic is going 41 miles per hour or more, there's no surprise then that you can get speeding tickets all day long. But that's not the issue. The issue is whether the speeding is truly a problem. The speeding is due to the nature of that road. It is a steep road, so that cars coming down are going to come down fast, naturally. And by the way, they're going to come down faster because people are frustrated with those 2 stop signs at the top near the woods. Why they are there, I don't know. I never heard any problem about something requiring stop signs. And as we know, stop signs cannot be used to slow down traffic anyway. If you're going up Pine Tree, you're revving up your engine, so you're going fast that way. So the nature of the street is conducive to causing speeding. The question is whether what has been done now ameliorates that situation or makes it worse in other ways, and I think it makes it worse. First of all, you have these small islands. They're not a foot high or 2 feet high, and yet you have these tall signs that say, make sure you go to the right. Well, what'll happen if you don't go to the right? You just go over the island, which doesn't serve any purpose. The signs are an eyesore. But much more importantly, our neighbors cannot park there. I can tell you from personal experience that I've been in the road next to the island, and the cars coming up do not stop at all. They're going at the same speed, and they're honking at me because I'm walking in the road. So this has created a worse situation. If you take away any point from this meeting, it has not been better. It's much worse. Much worse.
Thank you, Tony.
Hi, Jody Pergolis, 224 Spruce Tree. I'm at the top of Spruce Tree where Berwyn is, so I see a lot of the same traffic that's coming through. My comment is with the medians where they are, the residents along that side going up the hill are still parking on Pine Tree, which forces cars to go into the other lane, which is going up where the people coming down can't see. Probably 5 times at least a month, I'm witnessing people who are parking right there when you turn on to Pine Tree, and people are coming down, and it is literally, somebody already mentioned this, it's an accident waiting to happen, and it's going to be a head-on accident that's created because people are going into that other lane to get around cars that are parked. It's a problem, and it's much worse. To the point you just made, it is much, much worse than it was before. And there are other areas of this road. I feel bad for the people on Upper Gulf because that is a disaster waiting to happen as well. We have to slow down, but those medians are not the answer.
Thank you. There is parking. Is there any parking restriction on that road, Bill, or any? So do we?
Hi, my name is Barbara Barnes, and I live right at the house at the stop sign at Woods Lane and Pine Tree that was built a couple years ago. I've lived in the township since I was 7, basically between Woods Lane, King of Prussia Road, and Pine Tree. So I'm very familiar with those areas. Growing up, I could run down King of Prussia Road and not worry about cars. My mom would trust me to do that. Now, there's no question that there's more cars. A lot of it is due to things that we're not going to control here. I think it's due to just a lot of, new banks, pizza shops, hamburger shops, more stores. And so there are more people in the township who are working here, living here, whether a house is replaced with townhouses and there's more people. So some of that we're not going to be able to change. But Having said that, I do feel that these stop signs, I wanted to thank Steve and Amy and the board. I do think that the stop signs, at least I can tell you from being right at the one at Woods Lane, I personally don't have any increased sound. I've only lived there for 2 years right there, but my parents are right. Their backyard they're the first house in the woods on the right. And so, and I've owned my own house on Woods Lane. So it is easier to pull out. A lot of people walk in and out. They come from Northwoods, they come from Spruce Tree, they bike in the woods, they go back and forth. It really has been so much easier for kids to cross the road, for the bus to stop there. The bus is now there's not a car that's screeching behind the bus when it stops. So I think if the bus driver was here today, she would say that stop sign is a really big help. So also for people who are elderly, who are pulling out of the woods, it was right around a curve. It makes it a lot easier. My parents are elderly. They're pulling out of there. It makes it a lot easier. I have one new driver. I'm going to have another, and I feel that it's been a huge help personally. Not that I know Dennis feels like he's had some increased traffic at the other one. I don't live there, so I don't want to comment. But at Woods Lane, I don't have any increased sound. I think it's been a big help. I think my neighbor Suzanne Fleming next door feels the same way. So we wanted to thank everyone for everything they've done. In terms of the islands, it does make it feel like you're living on Westchester Pike a bit. So aesthetically, I think a lot of people probably don't like them, and I see the point about the dangers. I did turn off of King of Prussia and had to stop because pedestrians were walking on the road. I had to stop at the island. I was concerned I was going to get rear-ended. I threw on my hazards right away to kind of warn people. So I can see that those islands are problematic with people who live down there. I think it was a good intention. I think that the facts speak for themselves. It is slower on Pine Tree Road, whether that's the islands, the stop signs, a combination of both. But I think the data does support that at least things are improved. I'm not saying I'm in favor of the islands, but it seemed like it's hard to find a solution that everyone is going to be happy with those islands down there. I know that speed bumps didn't seem to be something that a lot of people liked. Personally, if you could go on the sides and they were just in the middle and it kind of visually slowed things down, that didn't seem to be the worst possibility to me, but I know a lot of people, don't love speed bumps. I felt like they had a more neighborhood feel than islands. To me, it felt more like Westchester Pike. But I think the experts have to figure out what's the best thing to do.
Thank you very much.
That was terrific. Paul Brooks-Stenson and my wife and I live at 43 Northwoods. We've lived here since 1983. I do think the solution is worse than the problem, that the cure is worse than the disease with respect to the islands. I just don't think they work. The street has always had, I used to run on this street when I was in running days. I'd run up and down it. It's really, I wonder how sane I was to do that, because people really run up and down that street very fast. And I have just a couple of thoughts on maybe what have struck me over the years as the biggest problem on the street. One of them is line of sight. I mean, the line of sight coming down the street, and I've thought this more than a few times. Someday there's going to be a FedEx truck or something parked at that critical point where you can't see, and somebody will come down, not watching that carefully, and hitting 50 miles an hour, and they will not stop, and you could have a truly awful accident. So, all the accident statistics are, in a way, heartening that nothing all that bad has happened. But just from living here and being on that street, I think that's a big risk. So I would suggest that getting the line of sight problem solved is important. And I think it's possible that and this is an idea just listening to people tonight, if one side, the downhill side, were no parking, that might help that risk. Because it really is the uphill, people have said people can speed uphill and in a dangerous way, and I think that's possible, but by far the biggest problem is people coming downhill. So I'm really hoping that somehow as we work this through, that we find a way that is a little more, I think it would look more traditional. I think it would be plainer. You could come down the street, kind of see what's happening, and realize you just do not park on that one side.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Paul Bucco, I'm at 107 Pine Tree. I live on the curve. I can't get out of my driveway. And these islands didn't do anything for me. The only way I can get out of my driveway is I have to pull up, roll the window down, make sure the radio's off, and listen. Then I ease my way out. Well, the islands haven't done anything to stop that speed around that turn. Absolutely nothing. I was going to move my driveway, move it closer to King of Prussia Road. But now that the island's there, I can't move the driveway. I have a question for the township. I don't know if the data has ever been assembled, but how many roads in Radnor have speed bumps? Do we know?
I don't know.
Zero.
Speed bumps, there's quite a few
Speed bumps.
roads
No,
that
it can't
have.
be zero. No, it's not zero.
There's quite a few roads in the township that have speed bumps.
Do you know how many?
Not offhand, but there's quite a few. I was just going to say, there's quite a few. There's double digits.
Double digits. So
Double
there's at least 10 to 15 roads with speed humps? Okay.
Yeah, at least a dozen.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Fleming. I live at 221 Pine Tree Road, and I've lived there for 17 years. I'm not going to take much of your time to try and reiterate what everyone said. I think we can all agree that the speed humps, they don't slow I've tried to see how fast I can go just to see, sorry, but it doesn't slow me down. And if anything, I've come up there and there's been somebody walking their dog or somebody, running, and I even have to, at 25 to 30 miles an hour, I have to all of a sudden either quickly stop or try to get out of the way. So it's definitely dangerous, and I don't feel like it slows anyone's down at all. Okay, so I've been here for a lot of these meetings, and I know there were a lot of surveys done and so forth and so on, and I know that all these solutions, not everyone's going to be happy with, right? So there's always going to be people upset, but for the sightline testing, okay, on Cricket, coming out of Cricket onto Pine Tree, wouldn't the time of that, I guess what is it? Is how many miles or how does that judged of whether a stop sign can be put there or not?
We look at the volumes on the road.
Right.
And we also look at how far you can see based on the 85th percentile speed, and we compare it to what you can see.
Okay, so looking at somebody coming 25 versus somebody coming 50, would that make a difference?
It makes a big difference.
So
because
so did you judge that on the 25 miles an hour, or did you
No,
judge
it gets based on the 85th percentile speed.
Okay, because I've come out of Cricket before, and if I make a left, if someone's flying down that road, you really are at risk of getting hit by a car. So I don't understand how that is not an issue as far as addressing a stop sign there.
When we did
ours,
I don't have the report in front of me. Does anybody over there have that report? So I don't recall what the exact site distance was.
So maybe we could look at that again. Also, wasn't the speed humps or speed bumps with the flat areas for the emergency vehicles, wasn't that looked at too?
We discuss speed cushions, which is basically taking a speed hump and you separate it for the axle width of the emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
And that one was rejected.
Any of those two that could possibly be relooked at?
Yeah, they were all included in the different items that could be considered.
We did look at speed humps. It was recommended by staff, speed humps. I will say that I disagree with the one individual that came from the fire department. I don't agree with his assessment or recommendation on that, because we did offer the split speed humps so that if, when they navigated through there, they could move it through there, navigate their vehicles. One of the concerns is that if we had that many fires in your neighborhood, we should do a better job of fire prevention talks with all the neighbors, because if homes were catching that much fire and we had the engines running up that much, well, we'd need to do a better job of telling everybody that you need to do a little better fire prevention. But I think in the recommendation still stands by staff and the police department, speed humps are the most effective way. I know myself and the superintendent of police, you just driving down there without your foot on the pedal, that is probably the recommendation that we have.
Right. I remember
Is the
I was
most
here for many
effective way to
meetings.
do that.
Many,
And that
many
began in
meetings.
2013, that we felt that is, and to this day, we feel that's the best
I don't understand why
option.
that's not listened to, the people, the police that are on the street every day, trying to control traffic, to the people that are making these decisions that aren't surveying the street. They're not sitting there, they're probably never been on the street. I don't know. But regardless, yeah, I mean, I was at the meeting and you were like, nope, we're going to go get an estimate for these islands. It was like all of a sudden after 2 years.
Well, I also
Thank you
think,
to the Clarks trying to help our neighborhood. You were like, nope, we're going to go and get an estimate. And no, I know people and it's not going to be that expensive. And it was such a quick, after 2 years of meetings that I spent coming to, it was such a rash, it seemed to me like a very rash decision to go in that direction.
Again, the speed humps were, in a bipartisan fashion, not agreed that we wanted to move forward with speed humps. We felt that this was a better intervention all around, and we have had a fire in the neighborhood there. This is a real concern, and the other concerns that I mentioned at the beginning. So it was our judgment that this was the best intervention, and this is and it has been effective.
But if the fire trucks can not have to go over those humps, then I don't understand what the issue was.
Well, it's hard when they're driving to make sure that they don't have to go over the hump. The fire department, their concern was that they still would have to come to a complete stop, and that is a concern in addition to the other ones. So again,
I think this is more of a concern.
but I also think.
I appreciate that.
But I
hear
also think Commissioner Booker's here tonight, though, and I give Commissioner Booker credit, he wants to listen to what you're talking about here and what remedies we can actually make from this. So I give
Those two
Commissioner
things
credit
that
for.
maybe we could relook at it.
Well, that's why I said staff is, but I mean, commissioners, but hold on, but the commissioner's here tonight because he wants to listen to what the residents are saying. So to me, we're option. But the commissioner's here to listen, and I think he said early on here, he's open to listening to what the residents are saying. So to me, we're here tonight because he wants to hear what the options and hear what residents are saying. So that's what you're looking at as a dialogue. So to me, I think you have to
Can I just ask
give him
the
credit.
police,
So
like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you lived on this street, what would you want in your neighborhood?
Speed humps.
But again, as I, but
You got them in 10 other streets, maybe 15 other streets. Hello?
But again, I think though.
I hear you.
But,
I hear you, Paul.
But
I do.
But again, you've got the commissioner who called this meeting to hear this input. So.
Going on and on and on and on and on.
Well, we've got issues throughout the township that we've gone on and on. So to me, we're here tonight looking to remedy the issue. So to me you're here having a conversation. So to me, this is what this is about. So again, I understand the frustration. But again, too, this process began before Rich was actually even in office. So to me, again, we're here tonight listening. So I think at the end of the day, we all want something that's going to work. So I think we're here. We've heard a lot of good comments here. So
All right. Well,
Again.
to end, I just want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank the Clarks for trying to make our neighborhood safer more than 2 years ago. Kate Vetrano for really being professional and on top of everything. And I'm sorry, Dennis, but I live up 221 Pine Tree. My dog got hit by a car there, and thank God he's safe. But I am so happy with the top of Pine Tree the whole way from, I'm sorry, all 4 stop signs. Okay, thank you. I'm down.
I'm Dan Diefendorfer. I live at 127 Woods Lane. I'm a pedestrian. I walk all over the township. By far, the scariest road around is Pine Tree in the area of the islands. Cars go so fast by there. You can't get off the street. There is no place to go. I would rather walk on King of Prussia Road. Cars are going slower there. The roads, you have a verge that you can walk on, but it's a safety issue. And I would do almost anything to get rid of the islands. And that's all I have to say about that.
Hello, I'm Maura Wheeler. I live at 261 Upper Gulf Road, so I come down Pine Tree and Spruce Tree a lot to avoid King of Prussia Road. I want to go back to what was said at the very beginning after Dennis spoke about getting the one stop sign removed. Commissioner Booker, you said you could get it removed. The Board of Commissioners could override it if you could get 4 votes.
If I could get 4 votes, which
against
I have not been able to get.
All right. I guess my question is, why can't we get a new recommendation? Why can't there be a new, the stop sign's been installed, and then they look at it and they say, this wasn't a good idea going up the hill for whatever reason, because there's 2, so why can't we get one, is my question.
I did ask for a review of that and asked to have that one specifically removed, and it was a point of contention. As a matter of fact, a lot of people said that I overstepped my bounds in directing the staff to remove one of those. It wasn't removed, Bob. You want to?
I'm just curious as the process.
There was
I'm not saying whether it
process.
should be removed or not. I'm not taking anybody's side. I'm just saying, if that's what's needed, what does it take to get it done?
The process is that it generally our traffic engineering staff, Amy heads that, looks at it and makes a recommendation. And their view is that taking one of those stop signs out would be inappropriate, and it would take the Board of Commissioners overruling the experts to do.
I didn't realize there was a new recommendation made. That's what I was questioning.
Well, I don't know, Amy, if you want to comment on that, we have talked about it.
I think that you hit that spot on. I don't remember exactly what I wrote in my recommendation, but you come to an unconventional intersection in those situations. And I heard some people discuss earlier today that if you're not familiar with the area and you come to something that you're not familiar with, then it opens you up to liability. So removing
there
that.
are a lot of
excuse me?
stop, except for right turns, that I almost die on in this town. because
Absolutely.
You don't know who's coming
That's
which
right.
way,
That's
so
absolutely right.
I don't
And those are
buy it.
PennDOT roads, and we don't have the jurisdiction to change those. But at this particular location, in my professional opinion, you should not be removing one leg of a stop-controlled intersection when the opposing leg has that stop control.
Okay. My second question is, in the statistics that you listed about accidents, have there been more accidents on that road than fires in that neighborhood, as far as, to your point about the number of fires we've had and responses?
There's definitely been more accidents than fires over a period of, at least over the last,
I would take the recommendations of the police over the concerns of the fire department there. I'm really disappointed. I hear a lot about the original traffic study when the question was asked about why the islands were located where they are, because when I come from Upper Gulf, you're coming down that curve and you're around the curve, and that's when the islands start, and you're already going, to your point, with your foot off the gas 50 miles an hour.
I think that's a fair comment. It's a fair criticism.
And then Amy said, I don't have the original report, I don't remember why. We're here to talk about it. I'm disappointed that seems like the fundamental question as to why the number of ones that were located there and where they were located should be one that should have answered. So I would like that information shared with us as to why they started there they seem all bunched down there, and it seems like some of the traffic congestion of people when their trucks are stopped, if they're spread out a little bit more, would serve the purpose better. So that would be a nice question.
That's
to
a
have
fair
the answer
point.
to.
I take that criticism. I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Crewley. I live at 103 Pine Tree, so my house is the one right on the corner with the fence, with the island right outside my house, across from the Clarks. And this is my first meeting. And when Bill and Kim sort of made the initiative to try to bring the speed down on the street, I was really supportive of that. And I have not followed this issue so closely. So I'm just here because, as it's been said, you all want to hear the opinion of the neighborhood. I'm here emphatically to say that the islands are counterproductive, and I think that that has been the majority of input that you have heard tonight. I don't think there's been a very strong case made in support, or actually any case made in support of those islands. I would also like to ask about the process, because I understand that you're here to listen, but I don't know then who gets to decide and through what process you take this information. I also don't know if you can disaggregate the islands at the end of the street from the stop signs, or if this is one mega package, you know, that's either lives or dies together. So could you answer that question for me, please?
Ma'am, thank you for coming to the meeting. I appreciate it, because the neighbors know we've been doing this for like 4 years. What happens, and I'll give you just a quick summary, if a neighbor complains about a traffic situation, whether it's speeding or whatever the case may be, they put a request into our traffic safety unit, and it goes on our agenda to be discussed at our staff traffic meeting that's once a month. This was put on our agenda. That's when the officers did the counts. They did determine that speeding is a big problem on Pine Tree, as you all know, and that's when we came up with recommendations to curtail the speeding. So that's how it happened. And then there is a list of alternatives to use for speed calming, and that's why you have the islands now. And then it gets, and then the way it gets either implemented or changed, it's like Commissioner Booker said, it's by a majority of the vote of the Board of Commissioners. We could only make the recommendations, but the Board of Commissioners decides what action is taken.
And so following tonight's meeting, will there be another meeting of the commissioners, or what do you anticipate?
That would be up to Commissioner Booker.
There's always meetings of the commissioners. And again, this is, we'll talk about the next steps, but this will definitely be an issue that we'll raise before the Board of Commissioners and discuss it.
Hello, my name is Jeff Weimerd. We live on High Ridge Road up in the Northwoods neighborhood. Sorry. And we've lived there just over 20 years. I understand, and so it's easy for us to say, you know, we're thrilled that the traffic has slowed and things are going better. And I know there are a number of people here who live in the area of the islands. What I would ask is, and a gentleman earlier had talked about no parking. There used to be people parked down around those islands constantly. And that was a big problem, and I viewed that as a huge safety hazard. What I would ask is, going forward, whatever the decision is to keep or not keep the islands, do not have parking on either side of Pine Tree Road. Because it's a huge safety hazard. So I don't care if you do keep the islands or don't keep the islands. I hope there's something there to slow the speeding. But please don't permit the parking again on either side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So how many more people want to speak? How many do we have? Raise your hands. 4? Okay. Thank you. You want to leave?
So my name's Jody Arena. I live at 100 Pine Tree Road. Like Leslie, this is my first meeting. First of all, I'll be happy to park in your driveway. And you can bus all my friends down. for no parking, all right? And I have lots of friends. I think the main issue here was safety. And I don't think the islands effectively give us safety. Tonight I'm coming down Pine Tree, and I always drive 25. So I watch everybody tailgate me all the way down, right? I stop at all the stop signs. I don't roll through. Can't say I do that everywhere, officer, but I do it on Pine Tree. But I see my daughter tonight running up Pine Tree Road, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Which my wife tells me she does a lot, right? I happen to be coming home early to come here tonight. So I'm worried about my daughter. My wife walks on Pine Tree Road every day, right? And I think that's really the safety concern, is that the islands, and park in Paul's driveway. Like he said it, you can't get out of his driveway. And then you put the islands there, and it's right around the corner. So I don't think the islands address our safety. And if we've had 4 accidents, and that doesn't include the corner right at my house, King of Prussia and Pine Tree, which I imagine there's a few there, because I've seen a few. So anyhow, if you're coming with a speed bump and it's separated, the fire truck can get through it. If they can't navigate that, they shouldn't be driving a fire truck, would be my opinion. And we've had 1 fire, as far as I know, and then the officer said we've had 4 accidents. The other thing with the speed bump, for plowing, you can put temporary speed bumps in, and you pull them out in the wintertime, and then you put them back in. And then I do appreciate the police officers with the traffic counts and the tickets and all that, but I think if we have the sign that says you're speeding, if it, that puts it out there, gives you the warning, I think if we had more visibility on Pine Tree, maybe we'll all chip in and buy a cop car and, put it in the driveway. I'm dead serious, but I mean, we got to get people to slow down. And to the point of maybe it's artificially too low. So should I raise the speed limit on the Blue Route to 90? I mean, that's a ridiculous comment. I apologize for saying it's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous. But again, the islands are not addressing safety. And to say that we shouldn't park on the street, I mean, we don't. Bill's parked on his grass the other day because he's having his driveway seal coated. I mean, it's an untenable situation that we have here. And to allow this to continue in our township, and you say it's 85th percentile, so you have 85% or 15% of the people driving in excess of 40 or 35 or whatever the number is. 15%, that's a significant number, right? And there could be driving in excess 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles. So again, I don't think we're addressing the safety. We have to look at it differently. If the majority of the people want speed bumps and we can separate them, we can take them out in the wintertime for plowing, and we get more visibility, we can help solve this problem in a safe manner for everybody. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, my name is Ted Laws. I live on Highview Drive. This is obviously a multifaceted issue, but I would like to reinforce the comments of Mr. Berg Stenson regarding sightlines. Speed is obviously a component to safety, but sightlines are clearly a component of safety. So the comments earlier about trees on the curve are only one component of the sightlines. The curve contains a lot of other foliage and vegetation other than trees. And I would like to ask if anybody in the room might have a comment about foliage in the right-of-way and whether there's anything the township can do to help regulate the foliage, because the foliage causes, some percentage, a large percentage of the problem of the speed. If someone can see what's ahead, they can always change their behavior, change their speed. But if they can't see, then the speed is a problem. So does anybody have a comment about right-of-way and whether foliage in the right-of-way is regulated by the township, or whether there's anything that can be done about that?
Mr. Laws, the township, when we started working on Pine Tree Road, December 17, 2013, the superintendent had us walk all the houses and ask them to trim back their trees and bushes. We actually revisited the other day. 2 incidents were generated a day after we didn't hear back from 2 of the residents about cutting back in the area of Cricket. There's still a couple things. So We have requested specifically, more than just a request, a formal letter signed by the superintendent of police. Several people did trim them back. Each year, we have to revisit several intersections. It's not just there where after the winter growth and the leaves come back, we notice different changes. But there are some people who have not responded to those letters, and we do have the capability, if directed, to potentially follow up or have our solicitor follow up if there's a lack of compliance.
Well, thank you. To me, you know, it's clear that speed is an issue, and I'm all for supporting a safety solution to the speed. But I think hand in hand with a speed solution, certainly a sightline solution, doing something about that vegetation on that curve. You know, the residents that live, you know, from basically 131 down to about 111, if you can't get out of your driveway safely, do something about the vegetation. You know, good things come to people who, you know, take care of themselves. You know, take care of their vegetation on your own property, and if it's not on your property, your neighbor's property. Work together to try and improve the sightlines, which I think will greatly improve safety, hand in hand with a speed correction. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have, hey, Heidi, this is for the residents up there.
I'm a resident.
You're not part of the neighborhood there. You live over by my house. You're not. This is for the Pine Tree Road area.
Don't worry. My name is Heidi.
Heidi, you're making Heidi is a political candidate.
With you. We just need an email address for you so we know moving forward.
Heidi, would you like let the community speak? You have your time.
Is this normally how you speak to people? I'm a resident. We need a way to communicate with you so we know moving forward
Heidi,
that things will get done. That's all I wanted to say.
Anybody else? Anybody else in the neighborhood? Go ahead.
I'm Bill Clark. I live at 110 Pine Tree Road, and I don't want to make this a political issue. This is a safety issue. I have a 12-year-old son who's autistic, and I have a young 9-year-old who has to wait at the end of our driveway for their bus. And there's just too many occasions where I see people flying up and down the road, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but speed humps are cost-effective, and they work. And I think that's the only solution at this point. And I love everyone's ideas, and I'm glad. I thank you for putting this together and for your enforcement, but it's pretty clear that speed humps are the only thing that will reduce the speed and keep our children safe.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm Kate Vetrano. I live at 120 Pine Tree Road. And my main point here is we all know that the traffic on Pine Tree goes too fast. What we have done now, what the township has done now, is installed a traffic device on our block that is dangerous and is going to cause other problems. People are going to get hurt. The township is going to be responsible. We have to get rid of the islands.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Sure.
Hi, I'm Deirdre Korick. I'm at 22 Weirwood Road, which is right off of Spruce Tree Road. I want to be a proponent and say that I second any motion for speed humps. But when I look at the speed islands, and I did not understand the multiple speed islands, and I'm so now fearful that we will end up on Pine Tree with multiple speed humps. So I please ask that we, evaluate how many are truly necessary, how many might be needed, for the blind sight areas, and maybe that's the only place they're needed. I don't think they're needed as you approach a traffic light. So I'm just making sure that we please don't replace 3 with 3 speed humps. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tony. Sure.
But I feel in all fairness that this woman should also speak because I don't live in your ward. I'm just responding to something, and as somebody who attends board commissioner meetings rather regularly, so
address for our commissioner. He's my commissioner also. So I just
Okay. My email address is my email address is online, rbooker@radnor.org. If you go on the I'll go on the website of the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners. All of us are there. rbooker@radnor.org. And also, you can have my cell phone number, 610-742-9780. Tony, it'll be the last one.
Tony Bailey, I live in Conestoga Village. I just want to comment first how impressed I am with this community reaction and coming out and venting your opinions and vetting your concerns on your street and about safety, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and actually voicing actually what you want to happen in your community. I'm just here because I read this letter to the editor in the Mainline Suburban Life, and you know, I think people should have freedom of speech, but I also feel when you have freedom of speech, you should at least articulate the facts. So some of the comments put forth and said about Commissioner Booker, I know that I've been to many, many meetings over the past 6.5, 7 years. It was called the CICD process. But in that participation, I remember that this being brought up on Pine Tree Road. And I remember the process. Commissioner Booker is just one of 7 commissioners. This states that it was his doing. He's the one who should take responsibility. He spearheaded it. Well, he might take calls from his constituents and then respond to those calls and then put them forth to the commission, the 6 other Board of Commissioners, and then they take a vote. So when I see, and I'm just going to read this last comment, moreover, Commissioner Booker doesn't acknowledge our frustrations and accept his responsibility that we must live with or drive past his unsightly and ineffective Booker medians. Had our commissioner reached out to his constituents before deciding, we taxpayers would have saved $70,000. Our lives and commutes wouldn't have been disrupted during the construction, existence, and future removal of Booker's medians. I just felt that was terribly disingenuous, and I think if you want to have an honest dialogue, you need to contact your commissioner or your own commissioner, which I can do, and that's how the process starts. It wasn't Commissioner Booker's idea. He just had a complaint from one of his constituents, and he acted upon it. Thank you.
Folks, if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out, and I really appreciate the input, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time.
I do have one last question. We've heard a lot from a lot of people, and before we conclude this meeting, you've been sitting here as well, so I'm wondering what your thoughts are at this point. I know you have to discuss what you heard tonight with your fellow members of the board.
Right.
But a lot has been said tonight, and a lot of good ideas have been exchanged. So how do you feel about all this? When you walk away from this tonight, what do you think? What do you think is the best way to go?
What we're going to have to take this data. This is part of what I used to talk about: plan, do, check, act. Right. So you do a plan. You actually plan it, you do it, and now this is part of the check. So we had a solution. We took a look. This has been a 4-year process. We evaluated all the alternatives. We came up with an alternative, and turns out the alternative actually has some effectiveness. We have some unforeseen consequences and some new issues that have been raised that are worthy of consideration. So we'll take those back with our engineering staff, with our township manager. I'll talk to some of the other commissioners, and we will determine how we move forward, whether that's removing the islands whether that's installing a new mitigation device like speed humps, whether that's temporary speed humps. Bob's talked about temporary speed humps, and that was raised here. Again, we'll have to take a look, and I want to have some more information from our experts on the information that's been raised here, and we'll get some of their recommendations, and then bring it before the board, and we'll talk about the solutions that will come from that.
Have you formulated an opinion at all? Based on what you've heard, I realize you have to do all the due diligence.
I want to do some due diligence here, and I appreciate the folks that are here and who are concerned about this. Again, want to review it with the experts and really understand all the issues, not just the islands, but also exactly where we are in sight lines, where we are on cutting back trees. The police talked about this as well. This has been an ongoing issue with the trees and the shrubbery that's in the right-of-way. It should all be 3 feet back from the curb. So take a look at all those, and we will revisit the traffic calming, and we'll have it as an issue for the commissioners, and I will keep everyone informed about when we raise this again for consideration. I can't at this point give you a timeline. Again, I want to have an opportunity for the experts to evaluate what they've heard, for us to talk about it, and to get some real data on all these issues, and we'll act with all deliberate speed.
We also get the explanation as to why the islands were located where they were and the number of them down there.
Sure, that'll be part of the design review, right? So what I can commit to, and Bob I'm sure agrees, that we will evaluate the project and the effectiveness of it, and do a critique, and determine how best to mitigate the issues that have been raised.
And we'll commit to the commissioner, we'll make this a top priority, and we'll make this that we'll begin, if you're okay with this, Commissioner, we'll begin this tomorrow, and we'll look at this, and we'll even look at the options of temporary speed humps too as well. So we'll start working with you tomorrow on this to do this and start working as the evaluation.
We don't want to put temporary speed humps with the islands.
Well, we would need,
That's not.
but
that's not what he means.
No, correct. So we will start looking at options beginning tomorrow.
Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate it. Also, rbooker@radnor.org. Email me. I think most people here have my email address, but if you don't, please do.